Good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Mir. I am a student at Florida International University, and today I will be discussing forced child labor. Let's begin by defining child labor. Not all work done by children should be classified as child labor that is to be targeted for elimination. Children's or adolescents' participation in work that does not affect their health and personal development or interfere with their schooling is generally regarded as being something positive. This includes activities such as helping their parents around the home, assisting in their family business, or earning pocket money outside of school hours, and also during holidays. This kind of activities contribute to children's development and to the welfare of their families. They provide them with skills and experience and help to prepare them to be productive members of society during their adult life. The term child labor is often defined as work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, and their dignity, and that is harmful to physical and mental development. It also refers to work that is mentally, physically, socially, or morally dangerous and harmful to children, and interferes with their schooling by depriving them of the opportunity to attend school, obligating them to leave school prematurely, or requiring them to attempt to combine school attendance with excessively long and heavy work. In its most extreme forms, child labor involves children being enslaved, separated from their families, exposed to serious hazards and illnesses, and are left to fend for themselves on the streets of large cities, often at a very early age. Whether or not particular forms of work can be called child labor depends on the child's age, the type and hours of work performed, the conditions under which it is performed, and the objectives pursued by individual countries. The answers vary from country to country as well as among sectors within countries. The agriculture sector comprises activities in agriculture, hunting, forestry, and fishing. The industry sector includes mining and quarrying, manufacturing, construction, and public utilities, like an example, electricity, gas, and water. The services sector consists of wholesale and retail trade, restaurant and hotels, transport, storage, and communications, finance, insurance, real estate, and business services, and community as well as social personal services. While child labor takes many different forms, a priority is to eliminate without delay the worst forms of child labor. All forms of slavery are practices similar to slavery, such as the sale and trafficking of children, debt bondage and serfdom, and forced or compulsory labor, including forced or compulsory recruitment of children for use in armed conflict. Also, the use, procuring, or offering of a child for prostitution, for the production of pornography, or for pornographic performances. The use, procuring, or offering of a child for illicit activities, in particular for the production and trafficking of drugs as defined in the relevant international treaties. Work which, by its nature or the circumstances in which it is carried out, it is likely to harm the health, safety, or morals of children. Labor that jeopardizes the physical, mental, or moral well-being of a child, either because of its nature or because of the conditions in which it is carried out, is known as hazardous work. Today, more than a quarter of the world's slaves are children. These children are forced to commit commercial sex acts, forced into a system of domestic servitude, or employed in occupations that are mentally, physically, socially, and morally harmful. Supply needs and industry demand for cheap, unskilled labor are some of the leading causes of child labor. Specifically, production processes that require certain physical attributes, such as small stature and agility, lead to the employment of children. In addition, price measures encourage suppliers, especially those at the top of the supply chain, to find the cheapest labor. Poverty leads these children to accept the job, or their parents ask them to work to supplement the family income. These supply and demand factors are reinforced by systematic structural issues such as lack of access to education, inadequate employment opportunities for the educated, corruption, and social stratification. Today, child labor is present in many industries, from the carpet sector in Afghanistan to the cocoa plantations in the Ivory Coast. Around the world, an influx in sex tourism, the insatiable demand for child pornography, and greed play key roles in the prevalence of child sex slavery and trafficking. In addition to strangers, family and close friends have been known to sell children off to individuals, businesses, and groups involved in the sex industry. Once sold, the children are forced to perform commercial sex acts. In the US and in most countries abroad, any commercial sex with a minor is considered sex trafficking. These adolescents are chosen by traffickers for different reasons. Although kids from broken families, runaways, and poor children are at higher risk of being trafficked, middle and upper class children may also be targeted. Generally, online predators and individuals looking to profit from the sex trade pick children that have certain insecurities and vulnerabilities, someone they can manipulate and dominate. It is through this manipulation and domination that traffickers are able to continuously sell and profit from the children. The standard price for sex at a brothel in the US is $30. Typically, trafficked children see 25 to 48 customers a day. They work up to 12 hours a day, every day of the week. Every year, a pimp earns between $150,000 to $200,000 per child. Abuse and indoctrination mixed with alcohol and drug addiction enable traffickers to enslave these children for years. Children still face challenges even when they reach out for help, escape, or are rescued. Some survivors of child sex trafficking are at first arrested and treated as delinquents. Society prescribed labels for those in the sex industry are often degrading, and children feel as if they can't live a normal life anymore. They might think that they're stuck living a life of prostitution and that they don't have any options. In some cases, and in many cultures, children, particularly girls, that have been sexually violated are no longer accepted in their families or communities because they are seen as tainted. Child sexual slavery and trafficking are connected to other forms of slavery. Children may be forced into domestic servitude and along the way are sexually abused by their new family. At times, minors are forced into marrying to give the family financial stability or to pay off a debt. The U.S. Department of Labor has produced an 8th edition of the list of goods produced by child labor or forced labor in accordance with the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. The Trafficking Victims Protection Act requires the U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of International Labor Affairs to develop and make available to the public a list of goods from countries that we have reason to believe are producing by forced labor or child labor in violation of international standards. It also requires submission of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act list to Congress not later than December 1st, 2018, and every 2 years thereafter. The Trafficking Victims Protection Act directs the International Labor Affairs Bureau to work with persons who are involved in the production of goods on the list to create a standard set of practices that will reduce the likelihood that such persons will produce goods using labor or forced labor, and to consult with other departments and agencies of the United States government to reduce forced and child labor internationally and ensure that products made by forced labor and child labor in violation of international standards are not imported into the United States. Awareness is the beginning of making a change in this forced child labor culture, but bigger changes need to be made in order to actually change this culture and help the million of kids that are forced into child labor daily. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. Have a great night.